Welcome back. We have a fun show for you today. Millionaire Mindset, 8 investment rules from the legends. And what we're going to be doing is taking you through 8 rules to follow when you're investing. And these tips are mostly from Charlie Munger, that's right, and Warren Buffett. And if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that we love to quote Charlie and Warren, because not only do they give great financial advice, but a lot of their financial advice is also, I think, what you can call life advice.
Certainly.
And so Julie wrote this content for today. And if you want a copy of all of our notes, which a lot of these notes, as I'm looking at them, would be great for social media posting as well. So if you're looking for our notes, you have to become a subscriber of our newsletter, which is harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is free. It takes you 2 seconds to subscribe, no strings attached, and we'll send you our daily notes as well as a lot of other content. By the way, we do have some of you who have expressed interest in being contributors to the newsletter, and we weren't ready to invite, I think, more contributors or more authors, but we are now. So if you're interested in being a contributor to our newsletter, and really our newsletter is primarily focused on entrepreneurialism and real estate agents and the rest of it, but if you think you have something that might enhance agents' the quality of their lives, maybe it's health, it's fitness, maybe it's spirituality, something you think might be in the same vibe of what we're trying to pass along in the newsletter, we do encourage you to send us a writing sample, and you can just email me directly, tim@timandjulieharris.com, tim@timandjulieharris.com. And we're looking for anybody. You have to be a real estate agent. You have to have a real estate license. That gives, that's basically your minimum standard for being a contributor to the newsletter. And if you want to build audience off our newsletter, that's great. As long as your contribution is something that's going to, really improve the lives of all of the readers, that'd be fantastic. And anyways, to subscribe, harrisrealestatedaily.com, or scroll down below and click the link below. Now, we have been receiving a lot of really nice emails and whatnot of late, and there's one that we received today that Julie wants to read. This is very brief. This is actually over on Instagram.
All right, here it goes. It says, "Hi, I just wanted to let you know that after listening to one of your podcast episodes about for sale by owners, I ended up turning a FSBO into a listing this past Saturday. I also joined EXP about a week ago under Rochelle, who you previously put me in touch with for her BPO help. That's one of our coaches, by the way. So a huge thank you to y'all and the help in your podcast provides. Have a fabulous week." So that's somebody who's both a coaching client and,
and a coaching client, and obviously a member of our EXP family. And we received another really nice note. Julie, you can read this one.
I hadn't seen this one yet. Sorry.
Nope.
Okay. Good afternoon, T&J. I guess that's us. Hope you're doing great. I just wanted to let you know that the information you guys give out is really life realistic. There's so much information. I believe some people don't understand how much you've invested on a day-to-day, week by week, etc. in your product. It's truly out of respect, awesomeness that you pour out the intel to arm us and be amazing people. And that enables us to be of service to others. Sounds kind of funny to read it that way, LOL. Wanted to share with you guys that all the hard work you do is so much appreciated. Thank you and God bless. So thank you, both of you, for sending us those messages. We truly appreciate you. And we especially appreciate what you're doing with what you're hearing. Not everybody does. Some people just listen to a podcast and say, well, it was fun. But those are 2 examples of agents who are implementing.
We receive a lot of notes and a lot of messages. And many of the messages are probably too personal. That's the reason we don't share them on our podcast or repost them on our social. But to all of you who are, on the journey with us, we certainly appreciate the honor of being your real estate coaches. All right, Julie, let's get right into it. And this is, again, we're going to drill down on some financial stuff, use this information to, I think, in some cases, reinforce the decisions that you've already made. But in the meantime, some of you are looking for direction, and hopefully this will get you thinking bigger.
Perfect. So 8 money principles from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. The first one is invest in what you know. Now, Buffett's principle is this: stick to industries and companies that you understand. This reduces risk and increases confidence in your investments. Here's an example. Buffett's focus on consumer goods and insurance companies like Coca-Cola and Geico. For example, we'll talk about Coca-Cola a little bit later on point, but another note is that the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, that's VOO is the ticker symbol, has delivered an average annual return of approximately 10.36% over the past 30 years. That's astonishing, isn't it? This performance aligns closely with the historical performance of the S&P 500 index, which has also provided similar returns over long periods.
Well, not just similar, but the exact, because that is tracking the S&P 500. So here's the thing to keep in mind. Julie and I are not giving financial advice. We're just opening your eyes to different things you could be investing in. But here's really what matters about what Julie just told you. VOO is what we personally invest in. And we do invest in some individual stocks as well. But really, at the end of the day, if you want to demystify the whole investing thing, I'll just tell you right now, Vanguard S&P 500, the ticker symbol is VOO. Just invest in that. Why VOO? There are a lot of different index funds, a lot of different funds that are essentially indexing into the S&P 500. It's because the Vanguard one has the lowest fees. That's why. I don't remember what the fees are, but it's basically essentially nothing.
They're low enough that you don't remember.
Well, it was like after, many spots in the, point something. It was like nothing.
Sure.
Versus some of the others that I had explored, and they were charging, it wasn't a lot more, but it was more. And compounding is your friend when it comes to building wealth. And we'll talk about that in 2 seconds. So if you're wanting to know where should you be investing your money in the stock market and you don't want to become a stock picker, I just gave you the answer. VOO, Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. All right, Julie. Number two,
patience and long-term focus. The key idea here is that the best investment opportunities often require time to mature. An example of this is Buffett's holding of Coca-Cola stock for decades, emphasizing long-term growth over short-term gains. Coca-Cola is also an example of number one. That's something we all know. We can understand Coca-Cola.
Well, and Coca-Cola is part of the S&P 500 too, so just keep that in mind.
Well, so for the past 30 years, why did he hold it for so long? Well, for the past 30 years, Coca-Cola, that symbol is KO, stock has shown a strong and steady performance, reflecting its stability and the strength of its brand. Historically, Coca-Cola has provided average annual returns of around 10% when including dividends and price appreciation. This performance aligns with the general long-term performance of the stock market, making Coca-Cola a reliable choice for long-term investors. The company's consistent dividend payments and strong market presence have contributed to its appeal among investors.
Okay, so let's break this down. Some of you don't know what a dividend payment is. When you own certain stocks, like eXp Realty actually pays dividends. When you own certain stocks, they actually pay you. Sometimes it's, once a quarter, sometimes it's twice a year, sometimes it's once a month. They'll pay you for owning the stock. So not only do you get the stock appreciation, but you also get a little bit of cash flow. Could have a lot of cash flow depending on how much of the stock you own. The smart move is to reinvest the dividends. So you can, when you're purchasing stock, consider using like Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab's got, in my opinion, probably the best online platform that costs you the least amount to be buying your VOO and maybe your Coca-Cola stock in. And then when you set it up that way, essentially you're going to be given an option of setting it to reinvest. Make sure you reinvest the dividends and you don't pull the dividends. You don't essentially just pull it out. Then it just becomes taxable income. So just remember I told you that, because compounding interest is, as you're about to learn, one of the most powerful things ever created, frankly, in the
history of money.
History of money, but the history period.
Yes, that's right. Okay, number 3, and this is something you and I were talking about earlier today. Avoid debt. Here's the advice from Charlie Munger, etc. The advice: stay out of unnecessary debt. High interest can erode potential investment returns. Buffett's view is to use leverage sparingly and only when it's manageable and beneficial. So, Tim, when should people be okay with debt?
That's an interesting conversation that really our message on this was drowned out by all the, when the interest rates were super low.
Sure.
Because when the interest rates were super low, it was actually kind of made more sense. Well, it did make more sense to borrow the money. Well, because here's the bottom line. Here's Julie and I's rule. And other than buying our original home, and in some cases other real estate, here's our rule. If you don't have the cash, don't buy it. But if you don't have, like for example, you want to go out and buy an expensive car. If you have the cash, you should pay cash for it. Now, some will say, well, you can put that money to work for you and you could put it in VOO, let's say, and make 10% on it. Well, you do the math and you pen it out. But here's the rule. If you don't have the cash, don't buy it. But if you have the cash and you want to finance it and the money works, do it that way. And I'll tell you where we learned that from. We have a friend in Austin, and I know this sounds a little highfalutin, but this is the truth, who is one of the wealthiest people from Mexico. His last name is Vega. He along with the government own basically all the gas stations, but where he makes his money in Mexico, where he makes his money is almost all those gas stations have Subway franchise, Subway restaurants, and that's where he makes most of his money. Isn't that hilarious? But it's a ton of these things. So he also owns some Ferrari dealerships in the United States. And so Julie and I were talking with him one time, and we asked him, about his business advice, because I just was curious. And he said, the Ferrari store that we were standing at the time. Remember, I said this sounds highfalutin. Just stay tuned. Don't get turned off just because I'm talking about a Ferrari store. I asked him. I know how much the Ferrari store cost. It cost him. He owed over $10 million on it, and I think he had to pay an additional $10 million. So he still had $10 million debt on the thing. And I was talking to him about that and just talking to him about debt in general, because the guy's a billionaire, right? You can talk with a billionaire about something, anything, you listen to what they have to say. And he said that he only borrows money when he has the ability to pay cash. So he said, for example, he said, Tim, if I wanted to pay this building off, the remainder $10 million, he said, I could just write a check to pay it off. So I will only buy something when I could pay cash for it. If I can't pay cash for it, then I won't buy it. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, when you're building wealth and you're buying homes, your first home and real estate and all the rest of it, then you have to consider debt as essentially a tool, but you got to be super careful. And Julie and I had we were writing another podcast for all of you guys about investing in real estate in particular. And the problem with a lot of the investing is that it's highly leveraged. And if you have, like, say, for example, you bought a 10 family. Let's say you bought it in a community where everyone works for the widget company. They don't work for the widget company. They work for a company that provides stuff for the widget company. You have a 10 family. All of them are rented out. Let's say you put down 30%. And you make money, not a lot of money, but you make some money, right? So the building is profiting, it's appreciating, you're depreciating it, all the things that's supposed to be happening for you are happening. Well, guess what? 2 of the units go vacant. Hold on. What's going on? Turns out the widget company is now moving their widget company to another place. And all the people that work at the widget company and all the people that work at the companies that sell stuff to the widget company are all going to essentially have to relocate or lose their jobs. Now your 10 family has 2 vacancies. Within 6 months, it has essentially 8 vacancies. Now you have 2 tenants in there, and you have essentially a building that's not cash flowing, but it's losing money every month. Now remember, you put down 30% on this, but you still have a sizable mortgage balance on this. You still have a payment, and now you have negative equity. Well, you don't have negative equity, but you have negative cash flow. Where's the cash flow going to come from to make the payment on that building? It needs a roof. Where's the cash flow going to come from to put the new roof on the building? 3 of the units need to be rehabbed before you can re-rent them because the previous tenants didn't leave them in great condition. And now you're looking at having to lower the rents because obviously the widget company is no longer in town. Now you're negative cash flow. The whole thing goes spiraling out of control. Now, you won't probably face that many headwinds to a property, but if you're over leveraged and you have some vacancies, even if it's a single family, if you buy 5 single families and all 5 of them have mortgages against them and 3 of them go vacant, you're writing a check every single month. You are now having to essentially use what would have been your own personal cash flow, not from the properties, but from, in your case, selling real estate to support those buildings. That's where debt can kill you. And we've seen that happen many, many times. And when you listen to these investing gurus who talk about the power of debt, it makes sense when the interest rates are less than 3%, but not where they are now, because that interest payment will kill you and will kill your cash flow. Julie and I were considering investing in a number of limited partnership apartment complexes, and all of the prospectuses have been revised to reflect the new interest rates, and we're not going to invest in any of them because the cash flow is terrible. The cap rate's terrible. So I'm letting you know that if you're thinking about buying real estate, and you're thinking about taking out debt on the real estate, you have to operate under the assumption that you will have to make that mortgage payment yourself out of your cash flow. Otherwise, you shouldn't be buying it. So if your building is going to cost you, $10,000 a month, but it's not your problem because you're going to be making 15 because of all the tenants. Well, if all the tenants aren't there, or if the building has to go vacant for some reason, and you have to make that $10,000 a month payment, if you cannot afford that, you should not be buying that building. That's in the honest to God truth. That's that way you mitigate your downside risk.
Well, the biggest problem with that is that much of what you just laid out is not ever going to be in your control. You can't control when tenants vacate, whether they give you notice or not. You can't control whether the building next to you starts to go, downhill and you can't get the same rents that you can. You can't control when furnaces break and roofs need replaced. You can't control all of that. And then add on top of that, the potential of a balloon payment after 3 or 5 years, and you could wind up not wishing that you didn't own that property. Now, this is a different conversation than your own personal single family or townhome residence.
Right, because this is the reason that when it comes to, like, for example, if you're borrowing money to buy your own house and your option is to lease, so you have a forced payment every single month, whether you like it or not. And as long as that, makes sense for you to buy versus renting, then you should do it because you don't have a choice, but you're going to have a payment. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does.
And you do have control over, you want to live there, you buy it, you sell it, you lease it, you rent it, whatever. You are in control of that situation for the most part.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, though, the fact is that when it comes to some of these, like all this, I don't even think it's well-intentioned, half of it, but all this air quoting well-intentioned advice about how to build your net worth off multifamily properties. Traditionally, it's certainly worked. It panned out. But in an environment like we have now with higher interest rates.
And higher prices too.
And well, rents are going up, so maybe it'll work out. But you're also seeing property taxes going up.
Yes.
It's not the home run. It won't probably be a home run in many markets for probably some time to come.
Exactly.
Because it just is too expensive. The cap rates are terrible.
Which brings us back to talking about other types of investment. All right, so number 4, diversification versus concentration. Buffett's take on this is, while diversification is protection against ignorance, investing heavily in a few well-researched companies can yield better returns. Munger's insight is to focus on a few high-quality businesses rather than spreading investments too thin.
Now, I researched that, and I researched Charlie in particular, and he loves himself some Costco.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he loves himself some Costco. So buy Costco. But so why would you want to buy VOO, which is an index of the S&P 500 and individual stocks? Because if you look at the performance of all the stocks in the S&P 500, if I remember correctly, I did this maybe 6 months ago. The reason in the last 12 months the S&P 500 has done really well is because of I think it was 6 stocks. So 6 stocks were overperformers, outperformed essentially the other 50 that were in the S&P 500.
That were still
or
maybe
the other 250.
doing well, but averaging out.
Well, there were some that were not doing well at all.
Yeah.
But the top ones like NVIDIA. Thank you. Right. And there even Facebook and some others were so powerful that they were essentially brought the entire S&P 500 up. So if you'd invested in the S&P 500 and those individual stocks, you did really well.
Very well said. All right, number 5, and this applies not just to investing, but to life, and that is the philosophy of continuous learning. The philosophy is to constantly expand your knowledge and understanding of businesses, markets, and economies. In practice, both Buffett and Munger are known for their extensive reading habits and lifelong learning. And of course, there's always podcasts. You and I listen to some things about this. Other resources, The Motley Fool, Investopedia. I use Investopedia almost every day. And Seeking Alpha are excellent sites to enhance your education on investing. Some of them have newsletters. You can hone in on particular things that you want out of those sites. But there's plenty of resources. All of this is free. There's no excuse but to be continuously learning. This is not something you're going to get out of your continuing ed classes.
Well, but if just in all actuality, I'm going to go back to what we started out with because we wanted to give you, something that was very practical and tactical. If you don't want to spend the time to be learning, if you don't want to spend the time to really become a stock picker, which frankly you probably shouldn't be, S&P 500, Vanguard, index fund and the ticker symbol is VOO. And I'm going to give you guys some advanced coaching. There's something you're going to have to help me out with this.
Okay.
I
don't know what it is.
The 3-fund portfolio and the 5-fund portfolio, what was that called?
I'll remember in a second.
I know, exactly.
You laid it on me.
Well, you guys can Google it. Google Vanguard 3-fund portfolio and 5-fund portfolio.
It's in that Boggleheads site.
Oh, that was what I was trying to remember.
Okay.
So Google Boggleheads, and I won't get into the weeds.
I think it's Bogle. It might be Boogleheads.
No, I think it's Boggle. You got it right the first time. Boggleheads 3-fund portfolio and Boggleheads 5-fund portfolio. And you will find what you need to know. But again, the S&P 500 VOO is going to be probably a home run for most of you. And by the way, shout out to Motley Fool for naming this #1 residential real estate podcast.
Yes,
So
we're at it.
Go
exactly.
you. Go.
All right.
Thank you, Motley Fool. Number 6,
and this should go without saying, but it is one of their investment principles, integrity and ethics. The principle being to conduct business and investments with high ethical standards. Buffett's quote is this: "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it." I think that's great business advice too.
Okay, I'm going to give a 6A. So you don't have a point in there about what we were talking about. So compounding interest, what does that mean? So in the S&P 500, for example, your money, if it's appreciating every year by say 10%, that's not inflation adjusted. So inflation adjusted is 6%. But what that means is your money, you put in $1 in less than 10 years. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but in less than 10 years, that dollar is going to be worth $2. And then 10 years from there, it's going to be worth $4. So if you start getting in the habit of putting in, it doesn't matter how old you are, compounding interest obviously works, but the younger you are, oh my gosh. If, Zoe, our daughter, she's 10, and, we're going to set up a little fund for her. And guess what she's going to invest in? VOO. And we're going to have that compounding because we're going to reinvest the dividends. and she's going to, be a very well-off little kid when she's, our age, right? I mean, she won't be a little
Probably
kid
a
then,
lot
but
younger,
still,
but yeah.
She certainly doesn't appreciate it now because she wants to spend all of her money on Roblox, or whatever it is.
Roblox futures? Can we invest in that? I don't
Well,
know.
Roblox actually is a good company.
We should make her invest in that then.
We should. Well, but so compounding interest, that's the key. If you start putting in money, what happens is the money starts to double for you. And again, another podcast Julie and I are working on, one of the stages of wealth is when your earned income is less than the amount of essentially asset appreciation or appreciation from your investments. So if you have money in VOO, you have money in some rental properties, you have some different things that are essentially appreciating, and then increasing in value every year. When the number that is increasing in value by outpaces your earned income, that is a level of financial achievement that's worth pursuing for sure.
Very well said.
Which, by the way, won't happen if you don't follow the advice in point number 7.
Number 7, good segue. Living below your means. Lifestyle advice. Keep personal expenses low and avoid extravagant spending. An example, Buffett's frugal lifestyle, including living in the same house he bought in 1958. Now, you don't necessarily have to do that, but that's a good example. Here's a tool. Make sure that you have and use your real estate treasure map, including something called My Financial Picture, and your goals worksheets to be clear on your financial situation and future planning. Too many of you listening are guessing at what your monthly overhead is, what your business overhead is. You might even be hiding out from that, so make sure you're very clear.
Definitely use Monarch Money, and if you have rental properties, use Rent Ready. Those are 2 suggestions. But I'm going to go back into what you just said because Julie, I happen to know that Warren Buffett does not live a frugal lifestyle. Mm-hmm. He used to have 2 houses in Monarch Beach in
nice.
Laguna Beach.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
On the ocean.
On the ocean.
And he has a private jet, if not several private jets.
Not living in a shack.
And even if he owns the same house he's owned forever and whatever, who gives a rat's ass?
Sure.
I assure you, the guy is living
That's
a
true.
very nice lifestyle. But here's the key word. Frugal to Warren is not frugal to...
That's right. With comparison to what he probably could be doing
Exactly.
for him, adjust accordingly, right?
So like we had I remember, one of the things when we're taking on a new elite coaching client is there's a pre-interview where we ask them a bunch of, different questions and whatnot so we can make sure they match up with the right coach. And one of the questions is about their personal overhead. I remember we had this one client who was onboarding, and this was a while ago, maybe 15, 17 years ago.
Okay.
And it got to the personal overhead part, and it was $125,000 a month.
A month.
And it was the secondary question was essentially like, how much is your this and how much is your that? Breaking it down, making people actually think. And sure enough, they knew what all their expenses were. And I had never seen anything like it as far as, now, did it matter $125,000 a month? Well, the person was earning at the time something like $500,000 a month. So, given their lifestyle and given what, essentially their income, and given that they were hitting all their financial milestones to hit their big financial goals, nope. Have a hell of a lot of fun spending $125 a month.
Absolutely.
And they were traveling on private planes. They were their
Expensive
kids,
schools, yeah.
Well, that was the main thing, actually. Yeah. The expensive summer camps.
But the thing that, and I know who you're talking about, the thing that was impressive about that conversation, from a coaching standpoint, good coaches ask these questions, guys. So impressive on your end to drill down that deep. But on their end, that they really actually knew those costs and they weren't guesstimating them.
Well, let me take it to the other end of the spectrum. So Michael Zawalski, okay? So he's another coaching client. Mm-hmm. And my favorite experiences, or I think one of the highlights of my personal coaching career was when he fired me. Mm-hmm. Okay, that doesn't sound right.
Why is that?
Okay, exactly. Why is that? It's because he hired me to the point, he wanted to get to the point where he had enough rental properties that were mostly paid off that he could live off the cash flow of his rental properties. That was the goal that he set when he hired me. And so I think it didn't take that long. It took like 4 years. Mm-hmm. But the reason that it didn't take him 40 years is because he didn't run up his personal overhead. Him and his family lived to the point where, didn't like spend more than, I think it was like $7,500 a month. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about buying and selling, he was working with normal real estate clients, and then he was using the profit from his real estate transactions to buy rental properties. And so the yardstick in which I was to hold him accountable, and he held himself accountable on a very high level, was how many new rental properties he was accumulating. And so after 4 years, he was essentially generating, I think it was $15,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So he overhit his goal, which was great. And then he fired me, which was great.
Well, you helped him accomplish what the task was at hand.
Exactly. We did what we set out to do. The mission was, the battle was won. Now here's where it gets really interesting. So Michael's part of our EXP Realty group, and so he's still transacting, but mostly he's transacting through referrals. What do I mean by that? He moved his family down to someplace in the Caribbean, I think St. Bart's, and he lives down there full time, living off the cash flow from his rental portfolio that was up somewhere on the East Coast. How badass is that? And by the way, I think he's probably like 45. So Michael, if you're listening, I still rejoice from your success. So congratulations for that. By the way, if you guys are not Premier Coaching clients, I strongly encourage you to become Premier Coaching clients, and you can join now for free. Just scroll down below and click the link to join Premier Coaching, or just go to premiercoaching.com. And yes, that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our Harris certified coaches. So join Premier Coaching. There's zero risk to you, and let's talk about how you can fall in love with your real estate journey once again.
Because number 8 is surround yourself with like-minded people. Be around motivated, educated, and active individuals. All of our coaches are not just licensed, but actively selling real estate. You and I actively sold real estate for reals. So your action point is what Tim just said. Sign up for Premier Coaching for free today and get started. I don't know why anybody would try to navigate all of the changes and all of the different things going on in the real estate market and out, as I say, in the real estate wilds by themselves. Be surrounded by people that support you, where you can ask questions daily on your coaching calls.
Bonus point number 9. And this bonus point, I'm not going to, talk too much about, but it's really important if you're really serious about becoming financially free. Julie and I, first of all, let me start out with this. Like, your goal should be to be rich. And what is rich? Rich is where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. I gave you an example of Michael. Michael is rich. He's earning $15,000 a month. Some of you might be saying, shit, that's not rich. Well, yeah, it is. That's $15,000 coming in passively, and he's living in the Caribbean, right? And the last time I got a picture from him, he was like diving off some ship and going snorkeling. He's Polish, and so I call him my Polish James Bond, all right? So he is rich. And he was able to do that by essentially following the advice that we gave to you in today's podcast. Now, here's the challenge. Buying real estate right now is a lot more of a challenge for all the reasons we previously discussed. And in some cases, you don't necessarily want to have to take, maybe 5 years in Michael's case, or maybe 10 or 15 years or 20 years to get to the point where you're rich. And rich is where where your money's working for you. You no longer have to work for your money. The greatest shortcut, and I hate using the word hacks because I just hate that word. It's kind of lowbrow in my opinion. But the greatest hack or the greatest shortcut to creating passive income that I've ever seen, which I wish I would have discovered, Julie and I would have discovered, but I wasn't around when we were, first in real estate when we were 22 and 23, is EXP Realty. I have never seen a wealth accumulator like the revenue share model at EXP Realty. It's simply astounding. So for example, Michael, for example, for him to earn $15,000 passively from, rental properties, thank you. It took him 4 years. I know somebody, I was just talking with him on the phone this morning, that's been with EXP Realty for 2 years, who's earning it's like $22,000, $23,000 a month passively from EXP Realty's revenue share model. Now, I'm not going to talk any more about that. I'm going to leave it up to you. It's a cliffhanger. I want you to do some homework on it, and I've made it easy for you. The link below to learn more about EXP Realty, the link is below, and just learn more about our EXP Realty group. But when you're on the website and you're going to click the link below, make sure you watch the first 2 videos on that website, because it's going to explain revenue share. Now, I think that the way to apply all this knowledge is you keep selling real estate and you become really, successful consistently. You run a profitable business, you reinvest that in things that are going to start to essentially make you rich, where your money works for you, you no longer have to work for your money, and do EXP revenue share. You can do all those things because they all work together in harmony. It's all you basically being a real estate agent, doing what you're already doing, but doing it with the specific goal of essentially being rich, where your money works for you, you no longer have to work for your money, and you set a timeline up. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years. Now, again, compounding, if you're 65, you don't have a lot of time, just keeping it real, for the compounding to work for you, but you do have time to benefit from revenue share. So open your mind. You're never too young or too old to really embrace some of the things that we gave you guys on today's podcast. In the meantime, thank you for continuing to be such loyal listeners. Please do consider giving us a 5-star review if you love this podcast, and also let the world know why you love this podcast. We certainly appreciate you allowing all of us to stay on our mission, which is being of service to all of you. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.